Hi, welcome to a special edition of Visual Studio Toolbox. I'm your host, Robert Green, here at TechEd at the Channel 9 live booth on the show floor. And my guests today are Jason Beres and Brian Lagunas of Infragistics. Where are you? There you are.
There I am.
And the reason I wanted you guys to come on the show was to talk about controls.
Cool.
So the specific scenario is, I'm a desktop client developer doing WPF apps, let's say, and I look out and I see all this talk about Windows 8 and Windows Store and the new UI, and here I am in my WPF world, and I want to build apps that look modern as well. We don't want to be in this world where, oh, the WPF guy is building those old style apps that look old style.
Heard that.
And oh, the cool Windows 8 guy is building these modern looking apps. So the question that many people ask is, can I continue to build on WPF?
Yep.
And get all the goodness of that and keep moving my apps forward while at the same time making them look better?
Yep.
And so I've invited you guys on to answer that question. I predict the answer is going to be a resounding, oh, heck yes.
Absolutely. Most definitely.
And then since we're talking about XAML apps, what is it that you guys have for the Windows Store developers?
Great.
And since we're in New Orleans, you know how it works. You show me something I like, you get beads. Keep your shirt on.
Brian, he's been working out, so it's pretty impressive. But yeah, actually, Robert, that's interesting. We hear that a lot.
Yeah.
And even on Windows Forms apps. So we have this whole Windows Forms audience that wants their apps to look sweet and modern and touch. And so you have this whole...
Do you have controls for that?
Absolutely.
All right, well, we can add that to the mix then as well.
Yeah, but I think, people are looking towards, like you said, the WPF, the XAML, and the Windows Store for their more future modern apps.
Yeah, I think another thing that's happening in the market right now, especially with Windows 8 that's driving this, are touch-based devices.
Yes.
So, not only do we have this new modern look, which, Infragistics Controls actually ships with a Metro theme, right? A very nice, clean, touch-friendly theme, but all of our WPF controls are touch-friendly out of the box. So if, we had a customer or someone built a WPF app a year ago, with our WPF controls, they will automatically be modern and clean with a theme and work with touch right out of the box.
Before I forget to ask this question, let me ask, does the touch friendliness depend on the operating system? Is it just as touch friendly on XP as on Windows 7 as on Windows 8? Or given that Windows 8 is designed to be first class touch, Windows 7 had good touch support, I'm not 100% sure of XP. Do the touch capabilities improve as the operating system moves up?
It does improve a little bit. I think a lot of it has to do with the devices as well.
Okay.
How many touch points, the sensitivity of the touch, the actual accuracy of touch and things like that. Because you might have an older device where you touch here, but for some reason, just to the left of your fingers where the execution.
PC did that, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is 10 touch points. My Atom processor is 5, I believe. So yeah, it really does depend, and the OS does give us more stuff.
Okay.
Gesture support and other things. Windows Store apps, it's going to be much easier to build those from scratch. Right. A much better touch experience.
Which makes it really fun to test.
Yes.
Because now you have to test the app, the touchiness of the app on multiple operating systems, on multiple devices, and you have to know about the number of touch points. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and so, for example, our WPF swiping and gesture support in a grid is actually much nicer than it might be in the Windows Forms, just because of the framework level stuff that we could use, and the store stuff is even better. So you do get a little bit more, and even on the same OS.
Okay, cool.
So I can show a couple examples of some kind of neat things. Brian actually spent a lot of time working with our product team on a few killer examples, I would say, over the last couple weeks, really just for TechEd. So let me bring up this example here. This is an auto sales dashboard. This is an application that actually started out in Silverlight probably 4 years ago. We went through a whole design process on how it might work, but then we really updated it to a real WPF touch experience app. So things that you would expect to do on a dashboard per se, like I want to touch a portion of a map and let it drill in. All of the supporting dashboard data continues to sort of just drill down and drill down. If I select Minnesota, for example. Now all the data on the chart reflects Minnesota. Here I have scrollers, so I can move this thing back and forth like so. I can actually use 2 fingers, and of course it's a tablet, it's meant to be held like this.
Right.
I'm kind of doing it in a desktop view, but you can see that I have the pinch and zoom. So I can do that stuff with a mouse, but it doesn't automatically mean I can do it with my fingers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you have the mouse down events that can do things, but then you also have the events of fingers coming down, and you can track how many fingers come down and what those fingers are doing on your controls. So you can actually build out something that looks very, I mean, you would be hard-pressed to tell what platform this was actually built in.
Right,
if you just look at
kind of the key there.
And this is all service-based. We're using, going through a couple routers through the internet to get the data. So this is actually real live data up in the cloud. But this is one example that really does show you can do something that looks beautiful, sort of really modern, have a great touch experience, and this is a pivot grid. So one of the things we do is we have a design language at Infragistics for touch. So we look at 9mm touch points, we look at padding for expand indicators and contract indicators on things like grids. We look at touch points on filter dialog. So even if you have big fingers, you still have some grace there to make sure that when you are interacting with it, you still have a good experience, and the user does too. So I'm never actually missing any touch points, even though like my finger's kind of fat, but it's all because you design for touch and the OS lets you do that.
Right.
And we would do this for all our controls. So if you notice, these aren't just maps and charts and grids we're putting this touch into. It's your editors, your inputs, your date time pickers, it's your grids, your pivot grids, your ribbon bars, your outlook bars, syntax editors, you name it. We put touch in all of our controls.
Another cool one we did, which I want to show, is this finance stock dashboard. So this guy here is actually using live data from the internet of different companies' stocks. But you can see when I touch, I have a nice dampening effect on the tooltips. So if I want to see what's going on in December 24th, I can click it, and I have crosshairs that are intersecting on where my finger actually touched, and then we have really nice stylized. Of course, it's WPF, right?
Yeah.
You can make it look as slick as you want, and you can template it as much as you want. But then when you start working with the chart, you can do the zoom in, zoom out, and then if you're not like that advanced, you could just use things like dragging, zoom bars on the bottom of the screen and looking at date ranges that way. So there's different UI patterns for touch that make it, friendly for everyone. Not everyone wants to do this. Not everyone even knows you can do that.
Right.
But if I, hold and I can zoom and drag back and forth, I get a pretty good experience no matter what, level of comfort I have working on a touch screen.
So is all of that behavior built into the control, or do you have to code that in the XAML?
It's all built in.
All built in, so you just get it for free.
Yeah, you get it for free.
You just slap one of those onto a page, hook it up, set the data source, set some properties. Is there the ability to style it?
Oh, most
tremendously?
Definitely. Yeah, so all of our controls are themable.
Okay.
We ship with a handful of themes out of the box, but we also ship things like a resource washer, which we can take a theme that you have and completely wash its main colors, saturate it with different colors and hues for a quick change in look and feel. Or you can roll your own theme. It's completely stylable.
And do the controls have, on Windows 8, the built-in ability to know if you've gone from landscape to portrait to filled or snap?
Yep.
Sweet.
So a lot of that you can handle at an application level. Let's say you're building a dashboard and you're just you're designing your dashboard and say, okay, when I'm in a snap view, I want to change to this template, but we respect all of that.
Okay.
So we're not going to force you to have to do a lot of work to make the grid look beautiful or have to worry about resizing charts based on snap views and all that.
So desktop apps, typically when you put them in snap view, you more often than not just get the icon.
Yes.
But certainly if you go from landscape to portrait, then you want the controls to adjust without you necessarily having to do huge amounts of work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of that has to do with how you lay out your containing controls in XAML.
Yeah.
You're not using fixed set widths or anything like that. You're using auto widths, and because you want your layout to flow, and so a lot of that's on the layout on the developer shoulders of how they lay their views out.
Yeah, it's interesting because even in HTML, you use media queries, and you're saying like in a grid, don't show these 3 columns if I'm on a Windows Phone, for example, because the screen size is that much. So even in those controls, we think about that and make it easier for the developer to do it, so they don't necessarily have to worry about it themselves. But the theming, I think, is cool, because if you look at, if we go back to the, this is our baked-in Metro theme. So it's called Metro. It looks Metro, and the developer can take something that looks however the heck they want. Like maybe they had an app that was kind of old colors or different branding, and they just want to freshen it up. They can just apply our themes to it, and it will completely change the color scheme of every control on the form, including intrinsic controls too. So not just the Infragistics controls.
Oh, really?
So you can actually have a really slick experience visually.
Yeah, and actually, we're talking about clean, modern themes. Recently on my blog, brianlagunas.com, Infragistics just released free Metro themes, light and dark, for all Microsoft controls. Basically, all the primitive controls. We didn't provide the data grid or anything like that, because we would prefer to use our data grid, of course. But
I didn't know Microsoft had a grid.
Yeah, they do.
Oh, okay.
The text box, autocomplete ratings, things like that. We provided our Metro themes for free that you can get on my blog right now.
Cool.
Yeah, so WPF, we got you covered, Ed. You can, and that's the message. Like, you can freshen up your apps for touch devices. We have a partnership with Planer, and at our booth we have some beautiful 27-inch
helium touch displays.
Man, they're nice, but these apps on those big screens are just awesome.
Right. Now, do you provide some of the Windows 8 design, things like app bars and nav bars and settings, panes and flyouts, so that you can, in a WPF app, add these kind of Win 8 specific UI elements?
So I'll let you answer that for WPF.
Yeah, so we don't have those controls specifically like an app bar type control for WPF. The thing is, it's a different type of application, right? You are going to see companies or individuals wanting to build Windows 8 style applications in WPF, but that's like that's a movement from a new standard that Microsoft set on Windows 8 development, right?
Yep.
So we haven't really looked at that. We're still trying to decide.
So I guess I should have asked it, not do you have it, but do you have demand for it? Are you hearing demand for it? Let me ask the question that way.
There is one control we're hearing demand for, and it's a tile-based control for WPF that gives you the Windows 8 start screen experience.
Yeah.
That's really the only main control I'm hearing
and
some chatter about. Which one's that?
Because we're building them both for Windows Forms. So interestingly enough, we've had more Windows Forms demand for these than WPF so far, because people want to freshen up their apps and they want to remain relevant without rewriting. So the tile view is one that we're building now, and the Radial Menu. So the OneNote MX Radial Menu, it's really sweet. And I would expect you'll see that in WPF not too far away, but Windows Forms, we have it as well.
Yeah, actually I'm hoping to get a CTP out to the public in about a month.
Yeah. But those are two controls, like that Radial Menu, people see that and they're like, I could use that in so many places.
Yeah, those are cool.
It's a cool UI pattern.
Yep.
But you can definitely see how, with the release of Windows 8 and the Surface and these other touch-based devices, how that's kind of driving new innovation and controls for other older platforms such as WPF and WinForms. And so I actually think that Windows 8 has done a lot of good for the other platforms as well as releasing the new stuff.
Yeah, I guess you could argue that WPF did that as well. Came out with a ability to build better, fresher, cleaner looking designs, and then you in your WinForms will say, oh, I want to build apps that look like that, but do you have the capabilities inside WinForms? Whereas because Windows Store apps are XAML and WPF apps are XAML, and no, of course, it's not exactly the same XAML, but it's still XAML and a lot of the same concepts. It's a lot easier to then go to your WPF app and say, oh, I can do some of that type of stuff in XAML, in WPF, and even for free out of the box, or taking advantage of the controls you guys have. I think it's a shorter path in a WPF app to making it look more modern and more fresh.
And not only that, the beauty with not just choosing a XAML-based product, But going with a control vendor such as ourselves at Infragistics is that, let's say you start out in WPF and you write this beautiful modern application, you want to take that over to Windows 8. Well, guess what? We have those controls for Windows 8 too, and if we don't have it yet, we're going to get them. So you don't have to relearn new APIs, you don't have to recreate everything. You'll be able to share code across platforms, and you know, you're going to really make yourself a little more productive.
And I think too, what you get when you're in WPF, like Silverlight and like, you know, Windows UI, is there's a lot of built-in stuff for free, like animations, like easing, like doing things where that's, you know, I don't have to write the code to do that. And something like Windows Forms you do, and it won't really ever look that good.
I have no idea how to make that happen in XAML.
Well,
I'm sure somebody does.
Well,
it ain't that hard, really? Oh, that's good to know. Okay.
No, well, I mean, the amazing thing is, I think it was Blend 2. When Blend 2 came out, they made it a drop down. So you're looking at this stuff and you just say, what easing do you want and how fast do you want it? And then everyone was a designer.
See, rule number 27 about XAML, learn how to use Blend.
You know, actually, I technically, personally, do not ever use Blend. I hand type all my XAML. I'm hardcore XAML.
You know, I
don't even use the design surface inside Indigo
had
Studio.
Joanna Mason on the show to show Blend for XAML, and she was doing some things that I had done the week before that took me at least half an hour or more. She did these things in like 3 or 4 minutes, and I said, oh man, I really need to learn how to use Blend, and I've not changed my opinion since.
It's impressive. Well, and then, like you mentioned, going into Windows UI, like this is you can go to the Windows Store and just type in Infragistics and download our Windows UI controls. And so what you end up getting is controls like grids and charts that, you know, have the same capabilities and characteristics of the XAML WPF Silverlight, and it's because essentially the core is the same.
Right.
You know, so there's things that we change on the top API layer to make it work better for what the developer might expect for Visual Studio design time, but the core functionality is the same. So if you have axis crossing in your WPF app, you're going to get it in your Windows Store app. And of course, with Windows Store, well, that one's not a touch-enabled sample, but everything is enabled for touch. So you can do things, well, of course, the ones I'm picking, we don't have the axis stuff turned on, but you get the same styles, the same look and feels that you would in your WPF or Silverlight. And for us, it's not so much re-engineering the controls, it's a lot of testing and making sure the performance is right on ARM devices, on lower powered devices. The same work we did for Windows Phone, because that's XAML as well. So we have the Windows Phone controls, and again, it's the same chart, but Windows Phone has limited memory, limited horsepower, especially the first single core Windows 7 phone, so Windows Phone 7. So that's really where the bulk of the work ends up happening.
Right.
It's good water.
So
nothing but the best for you, baby.
Yeah, and you know, of course, the developers absolutely love working on something like Windows UI. It's fun, it's a new platform, there's new capabilities, and they can tweak it and sort of innovate on sort of what they're doing for the samples and the interactions.
Right, and all of our controls, especially on the Windows 8 side, touch is a first-class citizen.
Yeah.
Right, so we really make sure that we nail the touch story before we really move on to a new feature.
Yeah, so really, you know, our message to our customers is, you know, when you're thinking about building a touch-enabled application, of course you have Silverlight, of course you have WPF, and eventually they're going to have to build Windows UI. I mean, it's really just a matter of time. It's not like if, it's like when. So when you have to do it, we're there and we have you covered, and you know, you do have that great touch experience that you can deliver to your customers. And more, anything is about user experience. So the user experience has to be spot on, and so letting our customers not have to focus on building, you know, how do I build that touch? How do I build that animation? How do I build that zooming? It's built into the controls, makes their lives a lot easier.
Right.
Yeah, you'll be able to control all that with just flipping a switch on a property. You know, very simple.
Yeah, and
very cool.
And amazingly enough, it's the same in our Windows Forms product. We have a touch provider, and you drag it onto a form, no code changes, and we update all the touch points on every control in that form to 9mm with the right padding. So, like magic, you can run that on a tablet and not have to worry about what you're hitting.
Wow, that's cool. That's cool.
And it's always the boss that gets the tablet first. So they're the ones that find out, and then you get the email like, why doesn't this work on touch? Like, well, you never wanted to work on touch. So that's where, you know, we recognize that's what happens a lot, and we can help there.
So in terms of numbers, how many WPF controls do you guys have? Do you know off the top of your head what the number is?
You know, after I think 65 or 70, I lost count.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot.
We have quite a number, and we keep adding new ones. We recently added a Gantt control and a syntax editor, very similar to Visual Studio's code editor. You get all the error reporting and syntax highlighting. We're coming out with a new rich text box control with 13.2 in October. We're coming out with the new charts and graphs and all kinds of crazy stuff.
And how many Win8 XAML controls do you have?
Win8, we're shipping 5 new RTM controls.
So what's the total at this point?
If you include all the charts, it's probably 30.
Yeah.
40.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Lot. I guess I should start keeping track of the number of controls.
Well, the funny thing is it gets less and less, honestly, because in the Windows Forms product, there's like 125 controls, but you don't need, let's say, a status bar in WPF anymore. So we won't build that. You don't need a label control, so we won't build that.
Sure.
We don't need to build the text box. Microsoft gives you one.
Yeah, so the curve goes lower and lower.
Okay.
And the amazing thing is we start building richer controls first. So you see controls like a Gantt control, or even our syntax editor will be in Windows UI.
Pivot grid, schedulers.
Much sooner than we would ever build it in WPF.
So what's your philosophy for editable grids in Windows Store apps?
We've done a ton of interaction design work on that. And we know that it's needed, but it's not your traditional Windows Forms or WPF where I have a mouse, I'm going to click into a grid, I'm going to start typing. So what we've done is we've done a lot of work where you select into a cell and editors show up underneath the actual grid cell, and then options show up in the app bar. So there's coordination between what happens when you touch the grid, the cell, the app bar, and then custom editors that pop up. So it's not your traditional data entry experience. Because it's not going to work that way.
Right.
Yeah, it's total. We have to rethink it.
It's tricky.
And you might argue that because when Windows UI first came out, people were like, well, no one's ever going to do that. We've been in this long enough to know everyone does everything.
The best way to be proven wrong is to start off a statement with, well, no one will ever want.
Or that's not the way it was designed. It's like, well, listen, it's going to happen. And the first call we get is going to be, how can I edit this, Yeah,
I actually heard some very influential people in the beginning of Windows 8 say, you'll never need a grid in Windows 8.
And that
doesn't make sense to have it there.
That's the corollary to that.
Our customers say
you'll
otherwise.
never need, right.
Yeah. So we definitely thought about all of that. And in fact, in the current grid that we ship now, the editing is very simple. And later this year, we're going to ship our new editing experience, which does coordinate the app bar. And it was all thought out. What we do at Infragistics is we have interaction designers on the product teams. So they're part of the design process.
Right.
API stuff and interaction. So, we did our homework, and hopefully what we ship is in line with what people might expect on a touch screen. But it's a lot of naysayers at first.
Yeah, I'll take it a step further. We have great WPF controls. We have great Windows 8 XAML controls and Silverlight controls. But we just shipped a new product that gives end users the ability to start creating interactive prototypes using nice, clean, modern design styles that they can actually publish out to the web for their customers to look at and approve before they build the app. And it's called Indigo Studio, which is right now free on our website.
Yeah, Indigo Studio is actually a killer prototyping tool. And what it allows you to do is design an entire experience and storyboard that experience. And then you can share that with others on any device through HTML5. But the point of it is that if I want to experiment with a new editing experience on a grid, you can design that in Indigo, get user feedback with actual interactive running prototypes, and then continue the iterative design process instead of trying to build something, get feedback, and then go back to the developers, build it again. So Indigo Studio is, it helps us internally, and it helps a lot of folks out in the market as well.
Cool.
So a lot of fun stuff.
And it's touch friendly as well.
Yes, it is. It's very touch friendly.
So trial editions of everything, go to the Infragistics website, sign up, get the trials, see what you guys have to offer.
Absolutely.
Most definitely. And
purchase, download, use.
For everyone here at TechEd, we're at booth 403. Come by, see us. We're giving away some great swag. Those 27-inch helium displays we're talking about, we're giving away too. So come try to win some of those.
And some Windows 8 tablets.
And some Windows 8. It's the Acers, right?
Acer Iconia, 20-hour battery.
Wow.
Yeah.
They're impressive. The keyboard has a 10-hour battery. And you plug it into the thing, and that has 10. It's like 10 plus 10 equals 20.
Crazy.
Is that how that works?
Yeah, it's an Atom. It's an Atom processor. It runs Visual Studio. It runs. It's amazing.
The keyboard does, or the
the keyboard runs. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Robert.
This is bead worthy. Here we go.
Thank you.
Didn't even lift my shirt up.
I'm glad about that.
Yeah. It's a family show.
So I hope you enjoyed that. We'll see you next time on Visual Studio Toolbox.